it's always going to add value to have the process model, because to be able to change, to transform your enterprise architects, your data integration managers, they're all going to want to understand what does the process look like.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers, and I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with various business process management practitioners from all different areas of an organization. And today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Nick Baily, who has a wealth of experience. And Nick's worked at some fairly large Australian organizations, including Aussie Home Loans, NBN. He was at CBA for 10 years or thereabouts. And Nick worked closely with Dan O'Neill. If you've seen the Dan O'Neill Process Pioneers episode, who's the former Chief Process Officer, Dan actually interviewed Nick way back then. So, and Nick is now moving into a consulting role at Perpetual. But yeah, really excited for today's conversation. Nick, thanks for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me along. And just to shout out to Gavin Curry from Leonardo, who is also a previous guest of yours, who nominated me. So yeah, lovely to be invited.
Great. Awesome. And what we do and normally for our interviews is I pass it off to you to give us a bit more context, a bit more background, so that our viewers, have a bit of a grid for who you are and where you're coming from. Tell us or take us back to the beginning of where your interest for BPM first came from, and then take us on a journey leading up to where we are today.
Certainly. So started my career as a business analyst, and obviously at the heart of what a BA does, it's about requirements and it's often about process as well. So I sort of worked my way through the ranks in the BA world as a team lead and a manager. Eventually wound up managing a BA Center of Excellence, and that became an opportunity. We wanted to put into place standards and consistency, improve consistency around things like process management. So one of the things I did was to introduce BPMN notation. I noted that elsewhere in the organization that was beginning to take hold as a standard. So that was something that I attempted to standardize. It was early days, so it wasn't always easy. You get, there are some barriers to entry around awareness and education, and why can't we just use whatever the BA knows or whatever. Anyway, so I then became a productivity practitioner at CBA, their first wave, which was a fantastic opportunity to work to gain my Lean Six Sigma certifications as a green belt and black belt, and also to work on strategic initiatives around the bank. Quite a lot of that was done within enterprise services, but also I worked in the retail bank as a delivery lead, effectively.
Right.
So delivering using often DMAIC or similar types of approaches to get process improvement initiatives done. Working in process architecture was a really great opportunity to get to know more about end-to-end business process architecture, and putting in place a standard for that and governance for that within the organization. And more recently, I've been working in some contract roles, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And how important is putting in standards in place? Like you just mentioned then how you're getting a bit of kickback from some of the teams, some of the people. Why do we need to do that? Why can't we just do what we're familiar with or what we know how to do?
Yeah.
But talk to us about, there'd be people listening to this that would might find themselves in a similar position where, they're wanting to put some governance, they're wanting to put some standards in place around the process work that they're doing. But they're, I guess, put in a position where they need to articulate the value or the why behind why you would do that. So talk to us about that.
So I think it's really important to get the right fit for your organization and the state of maturity that you've currently got. And it's, you want to start simple, just open the conversation as a leadership team, and it really needs to start at the top. Agree, from an organizational perspective, why is it important for us to get a handle on our processes? What will be the benefit from a risk and compliance perspective, for example, or from a customer experience perspective, or from an operational excellence perspective, in terms of bringing about improved efficiency and effectiveness. And how can we do it in a way that's going to bring value as quickly as possible with a level of investment that's not going to, and a level of complexity that's not going to slow down the way our operations and our project delivery.
Right.
So I think, I guess my advice would be for the organizational management to become aware and informed, and then to open the discussion and to make a plan and to think and to treat process very seriously. We can see, in the news a lot about regulators and unhappy customers and things that went wrong and, failures, systemic failures. And a lot of that, most of it, almost all of it, has a process component to it.
Right.
And you will read time and again that the process wasn't clear. If you go into an organization's risk log, there isn't a clear process. Accountability isn't clear. When the data that we're generating is not giving us the insights that we need. And on that note, process is a facilitator. It's a facilitator to generate information that will put you in control of your business and give you a competitive advantage potentially.
Right.
So, if you really want to understand, the metrics that matter, that you care about relating to things like customer experience or risk, then you need to understand your processes, and you need to be measuring them, and you need to be able to understand, how you're going to pull the data off them. So you need you need to discover those processes, and then you also need to build your architecture, including, your technology architecture around that as well, so that you generate quality data, and then you can get the insights as well that tell you, from an output perspective, here's how we're going against a target. But if things are off track, and if we're not where we need to be, are we quickly able to go and find out why? Are we able to do that without running, a huge, complicated data gathering exercise that we're going to have to run again in the future because we're still not generating good data?
Right.
Or do we have our ducks lined up? Do we have our house in order? Do we understand what those metrics are? And do we have the systems and the measurement in place to be able to understand the inputs, the variables that are affecting that output performance?
Mm-hmm.
So so that I think it's just really important for management to understand the line of sight between process and being able to get data that gives you the insights you need. So all senior management are interested in data insights, and I don't think they see that line of sight.
Mm.
And if they're running a new project or program, I think sometimes that the process doesn't get the focus it needs early on.
Mm.
There are a lot of assumptions that are made, and then there's a lot of effort rediscovering processes because you haven't got them current and complete, and that's just a waste of money to have to do that every time you run a project.
Yeah,
it's an expensive way, and it's a sort of short-term mindset.
Yes.
So, stitch and time saves 9. Get in place some level of process hygiene and get control.
That's great. That's good. And I think, measuring your processes, that's so key for an organization to be able to identify weak areas or areas of opportunity to, I guess, do that continuous improvement, because and maybe the reason why organization or on a project level, process isn't valued from the beginning in some cases, maybe because I think that some organizations, when they embark on, a process management journey or exercise, they do a lot of documenting, they do a lot of like recording what we're doing now, but they don't spend all that much time looking for how can we improve this, and if you've got people in your organizations that have been working there for 30, 40 years and been doing the same role over and over and formed a bit of a habit, once you've documented their processes, if they're not required to change, they're just going to keep doing what they've always ever done, because that's all they ever know. So
yeah, well, I think it's, you're starting with a problem or an opportunity, and then you really want to quickly find out how you're going to address that. So it's really about setting yourself up for success. So to have the right mechanisms to be able to gather the information, to be able to, transform, to change, to keep evolving. And it's very hard, to keep improving if you can't get that data, if you don't have clarity, and if you don't have clarity on roles and responsibilities and accountability, and the process, So yeah, I think the conversation's a lot bigger than just process. It's really about what are the core things that we need to enable us to run our business effectively. And that cuts across, as we all know, people, process, technology, data, governance, having all those things. So it's just a really important part of that puzzle. So I think, a lot of organizations, they sort of they don't have the conversation about process, and they don't have I think for me, it's a bit like risk. It's part of everyone's role. You can't just have a process department or a process guru that's going to fix it. To put in place some sort of minimum standards and general awareness of the value. And I have to say, at CBA, one of the things they did well through running that productivity program was to generate a level of awareness, and they really tried to get people on board and to educate them. So also at the very senior level. So Matt Common, the CEO, is a green belt.
Right.
That was an outcome of that productivity, and at the time there was a pretty strong push for the other group executives also to get on board and do a green belt. And I think that's not necessarily the only way, but I think it's just really about whether it's Lean Six Sigma, but it's really about understanding data and performance, understanding business performance.
Yeah.
And what underpins that and how you can manage that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's really important that, in some of the interviews I've done, the emphasis placed on getting the executive buy-in, that senior leadership sponsorship, if they're not on the same page, it's, you're going to be battling uphill,
Well, they have a lot of things competing for their attention, and, it's innovation, and it's human-centric design, and it's, so it's really about, recognizing that it's an important part of in conjunction with those other things, and in collaboration with, areas like data science, to be able to work across those disciplines and get them talking to each other, and have, standards and delivery, and a delivery approach that factors in all of those things at the right level.
Yeah.
And in a sort of tailored way based on what you're trying to do. So, we all know that, some initiatives that don't have the process is not changing much. You probably want to validate what the process is, but you're not necessarily changing much. You're sort of shifting data from one place to another, but, migrating data, but you're not actually, your objective is not in the first instance to, do a bit of business process improvement initiative or something like that. So it's always going to add value to have the process model, because to be able to change, to transform your enterprise architects, your data integration managers, they're all going to want to understand what does the process look like, so that you can factor that into their thinking.
Yeah.
There's always going to be if you don't have it modeled, you're always going to be doing a discovery exercise at cost.
Yeah. That's right. And you've obviously worked in a number of different organizations, and you would have seen business process management carried out in, I guess, at different maturity levels and in different ways, different methods. What is one of the biggest challenges you see an organization face when trying to adopt and implement BPM?
I think it's the to see the value. It's an investment to some extent in in hygiene. In getting you're investing. It's like sort of tidying up your shelves so that you know where everything is. It's kind of rather than just having chaos and I'll just find it when I need it. It's like, but there is a different aspect, from an innovation and a sort of competitive advantage perspective. As was showcased on your Process Pioneers with Gavin Curry, who nominated me to appear on this, and I thank you to him for that. So Gavin Curry from Leonardo gave a really brilliant example about the value of business process mining, and being able to use that in a fairly agile, in a fairly simple and agile way, to be able to pull data insights and to discover processes. And I think it's really really important to that also that the process industry evolves to be forward looking and to think about to be future forward and think about these new technologies that are available and the new approaches to doing business process management and process discovery. So there in that instance, Gavin was showing how they're using the technology to discover the processes rather than running workshops and asking everyone what the process is, which is different. But he also really, I think, showed like some really tangible results. So if you were to ask me, give me a great example, I would say go and watch that video again. If you haven't watched it already, it's a really really good example of future forward process management.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really opens the opportunity for, I guess, less mature, like in terms of their BPM, opens the opportunity for them to get started with process management. I think traditionally, if you wanted to understand and manage and document your business processes, that depending on the size of the organization, that could be at least a 6-month, 12-month, 2-year, 3-year initiative, which for some organizations is a bit too much too big for them to chew, so to speak.
Well, look, another one of your previous guests, I think it was Marcello LaRossa.
Marcello LaRossa, yeah.
Marcello, excuse me. Marcello. I believe it was him who talked about what was the point again? he talked about being, that was it, being really taking like a value-driven approach around focus where you've got a problem, and prioritize your modeling effort and your discovery, your process discovery around around that problem, so that in parallel to defining that process architecture, that you're solving a problem. So I think that's an effective way to do it, rather than just kind of going top down. We're going to start mapping everything out, and we don't know when the payback's going to come, or we just know that it's a sort of strategically a good thing to do. That said, it doesn't work so well, I don't believe, to sort of if you're running a major program of work that's already in flight, and then you're hoping to piggyback off that and create a process architecture standard in conjunction with that. There's too many other competing priorities. So you're not going to introduce a new tool and new standard as part of that, because there just isn't going to be time. Speaking from firsthand experience, you are just going to do the minimum and that may be in Visio, if there's no tool present, just to give everyone a shared understanding of what the process is, so they can move on and understand what they need to do their part of the job. So you've got to focus where there's a problem or a high, a very important project. A very important process, a high impact process. But also, you've got to have established some standards that are going to be applied. And if it does involve a tool, or that you're clear on what that is, or because you're not going to be able to simultaneously roll out a new standard whilst implementing a project. It's just a different project. Anyway, I think you get the message.
Yeah. And talking about high impact processes, like whether you're discovering your processes through workshops or like discovery sessions, or whether you are using technology like process mining, I'd imagine when you embark on that process and you see your high impact or your critical processes, the ones where, if you could make small tweaks to and reap significant rewards from, how do you work out where to put your time? There might be someone listening right now that they're currently understanding their high impact processes, their critical processes, and they're noticing all the pain points, all of the problems, but how do you go about defining where to begin?
Well, so you would hope that an organization, for the different lines of business and the different products or services they're providing, that they're measuring performance in some way or another, and they should really have an understanding of for the customer, the things that are important to customers, how they're going with those, not just obviously complaints, but in terms of satisfaction, repeat business, market share, sales, obviously, but sorry, that's not actually specifically important to the customer, but the turnaround time, and the measures of quality, so they should have an understanding of those things, and they should have an understanding of their operational cost base, where we're spending a lot of money to get things done. So I would start by looking at those, discovering those if you've got blind spots, and then when you find we find issues, your issues might also come from external sources. It could be that a regulator has flagged deficiencies, or things that you need to remediate, and those are obvious starting points as well. So that, I think that you look to the data, look to the data, and speak to your customers as well. So and staff. It's really important to, you're not just looking head down in metrics, but you're actually talking to people as well. So you need to have in place ways to, get that discussion going, whether that's it might be a very regular forum where you're actually going to listen to complaints that have been raised by customers, and really listen to what they've actually said. Listen to surveys, and just get people aware of those things and thinking about them, and taking ownership.
So, and talk to us about that balance between, focusing on that customer experience, because I know that's been part of your role in the past, is working on that customer journey and what it's like for them. But that balance between what is the customer experience, and then also wanting to improve your back end processes, your internal processes, which ultimately you're, at the end of the day, you're delivering value to the end user, or the end stakeholder, being the customer. So it all comes down to the customer. But how do you, I guess, journey that balance between customer experience and back end?
Absolutely. So, I think you will have sources of information that will tell you how you're doing, and there are new platforms that are available that are embedded within your technologies, such as your CRM platform, that will measure customer experience along the way. So you'll have your sources that will tell you how you're going, but you also, may need to use. You may have a team for this, or you may, have a business improvement team that focus on CX, and they will help to survey and interview customers, or you may do it yourself as part of your improvement initiative. Or if you're running a line of business as well, you're a product owner or something, you should also have regular dialogue with your customers. So it's then really about analyzing that qualitative information. And so often the voice of the customer, the voice of the business is a good start point. You're looking at the output metrics and also that voice of, and analyzing it, thinking, you're trying to get some depth so that you're speaking to enough people that you've got, the weight of numbers behind it, that you don't wind up with sort of bias in your sample, and that you've got a representative sample, and you've thought across different customer segments and different personas, different types of users, and staff and business partners, and you've listened to them, and so one sort of core piece of work that I did with Aussie was to analyze and compile pain points to inform solution design. So that's really running workshops and speaking to them. But then on top of that, you need to I guess for the things they've said and you've heard, that you want to go and get some quantitative evidence to try to back it up, to try to test hypotheses and about what may or may not be true. And that's where you're then taking that data off the process, and looking for trends, looking for evidence that things are off target, and looking for doing your root cause analysis as well, potentially, to really understand what are the real problems that are impacting our output measures, our customer experience, or our risks, or breaches in compliance. What are the things that are most affecting them? So that's really for me the kind of journey.
Yep.
Combining the qual and the quant.
That's great. That's good. And obviously, like we have touched on, communicating or pitching to that executive level, and they're going to want to see obviously how process ties into the overall strategy. They're going to want to understand return on investment, and also timeframes. How quickly are we going to see this return? Do you have any examples? Because I think talking in theory is good and helpful, but I think it's one thing about the Process Pioneers series that I really love and have been enjoying, and I think a lot of people also enjoy, is hearing the practical real life examples and stories of what other BPM practitioners are going through. So do you have any examples of whether it's a small win or a big win, but where you've looked at a process or a customer journey, you've made a couple of tweaks and you've seen significant returns?
Absolutely. So for example, in the risk space, looking at an issue management process, and looking at the turnaround time for issues, for different types of issues, how quickly they're being closed out, but then sort of delving more deeply into the sort of trends, and being able to compare different departments and different types of issues. And I think I think that when you can show things in numbers, when you can convert to data and convert to things that really executive leadership, managers, staff really care about and are being measured on, that's when you get their attention. So if I say, for example, I modeled 436 processes. A lot of people go, well, sounds like a big number, but I just don't know. Don't think that made anything better for a customer. What does that really mean? That's not really. But if you say, I reduced the time to close an issue by 36%, then that sounds good. That sounds, and if you can begin to, in the example that, show forward trends and the implications of those forward trends. For example, the time to close out an issue, and if you can use the analytics to show that, if we keep on raising issues at the current rate, the forward trend is that we're not going to have enough resource to be able to close them out. Based on the time to close them out, and the average turnaround time and the rate that we're raising them, we're going to have a big problem. So that's like kind of like, whoa, okay, that's like something. Okay, so how many more resource would we need actually to be able to? How many more? What are we going to do? What are the options to address that?
Right.
Are we going to be able to? How are we going to close out issues faster? So then you're coming up with solutions to ways to do that, and look at different parts of the organization where they're doing it well, and look at the strategies they've taken, and see if you can apply those elsewhere, or look at. That's the sort of root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's an example where I just points to the data. It's really about showing the right data and the information that people really care about.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's really good. And as well as getting, pitching that value, or showing examples to that senior leadership team of like, this will be valuable for the organization. This is going to, we will realize results from this work that we'll be doing, or we want to do. Talk to us about, I guess, getting that equally that buy-in, or that buy-in's probably the right word, from the end users or the process practitioners, or the ones that, the ones that have been doing the process for 5, 10, 15 years. And then you're coming along as the process lead, or the process manager, and you're saying, hey guys, we've identified areas for opportunity. We're actually going to change the process now. And then, you could get kickback in a number of different ways. For some people, they have this fear that you're doing me out of a job, for example. For others, it's like, why do we need to change it? It's been working fine for the last 5, 10, 15 years. But talk to us about, how do you get that buy-in, or that from those end users, those process practitioners? Yeah.
So I think the why, and showing. Everyone's working for an organization, and we're there to deliver for that organization, and we're aware that that their customer performance, their financial performance, and their performance from a risk and compliance perspective are all really important things. So if you sort of present the facts, and you present information, to sort of show that here's an opportunity that we need to capitalize on as an organization, or here's a problem that we really need to address. It's hard to argue. I think it's hard to argue with that. I mean, it is important. And Dan and Neil did talked about this as well in his one, is that in terms of the drivers that are important, that that the organization needs to think broadly. It can't be just about cost out. There are obviously other things, and if you just have a cost out mentality, you're going to wind up with problems. In particular now, and I keep on talking about risk and compliance, and I'll keep talking about it. That is really top of the agenda, as is, of course, customer experience. But as well, of course, you need to have operational excellence. You need to have be efficient in that, because otherwise, you won't stay in business. So I think it's just like presenting things in a factual way. It's and just having the right drivers as well. And I think that's for me, that's the way to do it.
That's good. That's great. And now moving forward, for someone that's, that's been listening to our conversation today, and they're, they want to learn more about BPM. They want to understand how BPM will work in their organization, or how they should even approach it, how they should go about it. What would you say are the next best steps for someone in that position? Yeah.
Okay. Watch some of the Process Pioneers videos because they're good. Another one is that there is a fairly newly formed ABPMP, the Association of Business Process Management Professionals. And they do, much like, with the PMP, the Project Management Certification, or CBAP, Certified Business Analyst Professional, that you can do certification. You don't have to do that. If you become a member, they have a really good body of knowledge, which I've started sort of about 200 pages through it. But it's good because it sort of fills in quite a lot of the gaps and sort of brings the domain together in a sort of fairly comprehensive way. It's not it's not solving everything, but it just gives you a sort of it'll just color in some gaps that you may have in your own understanding. So I think that's good, but it also they're trying to build a community of practice. So I think to be able to build that network, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah.
So check out ABPMP. Another one is I'm a big fan of George Lee Tsai. Because I knew you were going to ask me this question. Actually, I have one of his books here. Next will be back to front, but it says process mastery with Lean Six Sigma, and this is very tatty because I've used it a lot. I used it for my certifications. But the thing I like about George Lee Tsai is that he puts process in very simple terms and puts the analysis of process in very simple terms. So sort of things that could potentially be quite dry and unappealing subjects such as statistics become quite meaningful, and he's got great anecdotes in there and some good quotes and things, and it's just written in very simple terms. So I love that book, and I've read a few of his books. I'm a big fan. So what can I say? Pick up a book on, but also read broadly. So learn about service design, human-centric design, because it's closely related. And the techniques that are applied there are quite similar and can be, carried over and give you a very human-centric sort of focus and mindset. Because you don't want to get bogged down in the data either. So I would say, think about that, and read up on data science as well, and that profession and the sort of competencies within that. I think it's quite a useful one as well. So you may have that in your organization as well, and in a particular situation, you may need to pull on that sort of expertise to really do some very clever analytics, and that can be a great thing to be able to do as well. So it's just don't be siloed in process, because that we're not about siloing in process.
Yeah, that's good. Well, yeah, guys, thanks for listening to today's conversation. Obviously Nick's got a lot to share and a lot of knowledge there from his previous experiences and what he's doing at the moment. And, we can only scrape the surface and in a 40-minute conversation. But if you do have any questions for Nick, by all means, I'm sure he'd be more than happy for me to say, reach out to him, connect with him. He's more than happy to have a conversation, and jump into the ABPMP group as well. There's a bunch of guys there that I'm sure will be more than willing to give up their time as well to answer your questions as well. So, but Nick, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me today and having this conversation. It's we've gone on a number of different tangents, and I think that the audience is going to glean a lot.
On a tangent? Oh, sorry to hear.
No, well, I think it was probably more so from my side. Like you'd say something, and I'd remember it and be like, we need to go after that. When I need to ask a question about that. But I think that's that's where the value comes from in these conversations. Is it's never the same conversation. We're always diving down different rabbit holes and trying to explore the world of process. So yeah, thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.